Darcy Ziegler, otherwise known as Teacher Darcy, and I teach reading online to people that have dyslexia. I just started this YouTube channel to talk about dyslexia to people and give you some information and encouragement. And today we're going to talk about multisensory learning. So come on, let's learn together. And if you're interested in this type of stuff, then make sure and like and subscribe and even invite some friends along too. So multisensory learning, that is the gold standard for people that teach reading using the science of reading. So everyone believes in it. I used to think before I had my own kids, and even when my own kids were young, I thought that what was meant by multisensory learning was having your kids write in sand, like with their fingers in sand, or maybe with shaving cream, or you could have them write with a crayon on some screen and it'd be all bumpy. And those are all fun things to do, and it's a great thing to do. But that's really not actually what is meant by multisensory learning. Actually, multisensory learning refers to, well, multi-senses. Like, our five senses. We all have five senses. Seeing, hearing, and smell, taste, and touch. Those are the five senses, of course, as I'm sure you already know. But we want to include as many of those five senses as we can when we're learning to read. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about multisensory learning and teaching in reading. So how can we do that? First of all, I wanted to talk for a minute about how when we're born, we don't know anything. We don't know anything, and we can't do anything. You can't even sit up by yourself and maybe not even hold up your head when you're born. And little by little, you gain muscles, and you also gain knowledge. Pretty soon you can sit by yourself, then you can learn to stand and walk and then run. And eventually you get so good that you can play baseball. You're so coordinated that you can hit that ball with a bat, and you have great hand-eye coordination. You can hit that ball, you can run to first base, but you won't get any points if you get to first base. In baseball, you don't get a point until you go all the way around, first, second, third, fourth, and back to home. So in the same way, we believe that you will learn better and get more out of your learning if you use the whole brain. Go all the way around in the brain. So to talk about this, I have this little brain hat. Isn't this amazing? I got this brain hat from some people that did a VBS program at my church, and but they got it at a website called ellenjmchinry.com. And so I'll have to put the notes for where they found that in the description of this video. But I just said, hey, that's a cool little brain hat. Can I have one? And they gave me the paper, and I had to cut it out and tape it all together, and mine is not perfect. I must admit that I was pretty impatient. I was like, oh my goodness, how do you get this exactly right? And so mine isn't perfect, so don't look too close. But anyway, the point is, this is a brain, and it shows how, well, first of all, when we're reading, we're talking about reading right now. So when we are reading, we of course see the word. So we always use our sense of sight when we're reading, and we process that in the back of the brain, back here in the occipital lobe. And isn't that interesting? God has made it so that our eye, like our right eye processes it in the back of our left back part of our brain, and the left eye in the back right part of the brain. And then our hearing is processed above, it's in this area, it's called the temporal lobe, right above and behind our ears. And then when we write stuff, when we are writing the letters or spelling the words, we can feel our hand writing, and that is processed up here. And also when we say the words and we say the letters, we can feel our mouth moving, and that's the part of the brain, the sensory cortex, the motor cortex and the sensory cortex, where we move and where we feel that movement up here. And then, of course, the most important part, where we think about what the word means, is up here in the front of our brain. And of course, that's the most important part. But we want to use all of our brain, because we believe that when a child, or whether you're a child or not, a person, when they use their whole brain, they will learn it better, and it will stick better, and they'll just remember it more. So that's why we use multisensory teaching for teaching reading. We are trying to use the whole brain. We're not only looking at the words, but we're hearing it, and we're saying it, and we're writing it at the same time, all at the same time. Now, as far as I know, there aren't actually any studies done on multisensory learning and whether it really helps or not, because I think it's like people feel like, how can we say to this one group of kids, you're going to get the gold standard of how to teach reading, and the other group, no, we're not going to give you the best teaching. So I don't know, they haven't studied those two groups and to see how much it really helps. But it can't hurt anything, and we believe that it really will help if they involve the whole brain in learning to read, and that helps them to remember everything. So let me give you an example of how that would sound and look. If you were teaching your kids spelling, and spelling is the opposite side of the coin of reading. Reading and spelling are the same coin, opposite sides of the same coin. So let's say, when you are reading, whatever you learn to read, you should also learn to spell it. So let's say you're just beginning, you're learning to read simple words that have like 3 letters, then you should also expect your kid to learn to spell those words. So you would say the word that you want them to spell. I'll give you an example, mat, and then they have to repeat it and say mat. And then they need to break it apart into each separate sound and say I'm using some colored squares to represent my sounds. And now I can see that there are 3 sounds in that word. I can hear it, I can see it, I've slowed the word down and broken it apart, and I can see that there are 3 sounds. Then I'm going to touch and say, how will I spell those 3 sounds? At. I'm going to spell it M-A-T. Then I'm going to write it, and while I write, I'm going to say it out loud. M-A-T. And that way I include the way that it feels to form the letters with my hand while I say it out loud. And I, of course, see it. And I can think about what it means. So I've got as many senses as possible working into that. I don't know how you can include smell or taste, but if you want, you could, put on a diffuser and have a good smell in your room while you're working on reading. That probably won't help reading that much, but it definitely won't teach reading, but it will be fun and maybe make the experience more enjoyable to your child, which is a good thing. So God has made us fearfully and wonderfully, and He has made our brains so that they can learn to read. Of course, we weren't born learning how to read. just as you were not born knowing how to play baseball. But little by little, you learn these things. And just like baseball, when you play baseball, there are so many skills that you have been learning for years before you're actually able to get out there and hit the ball with a bat. And the same way with reading. There are many skills that build up to that. For maximum success, we believe that it is best to use your whole brain as much as possible. And you can see how this is way superior to just holding up flashcards and expecting your kid to just know the word, just look at the word and know what the word means and what it says and what it means. And so when we do it this way, we have slowed it down. We are able to see how many sounds is in the word. We can hear the sounds and see the sounds, and we can feel the way that we write the sounds. And so you can see how superior that is. And by the way, even sight words, we're going to talk about sight words in the future that many people think you can't learn in this way. You just have to memorize them. And that's the words that are most likely to be used with flashcards, to be used with them. But we're going to talk about that in the future. If you are interested in hearing what I have to say about sight words and flashcards, then you might want to subscribe and like this video, and maybe even hit the little bell ringer so you'll know when that video comes out. All right, see you then.